Good evening, this is Rodney with the Triton Wave Market Timing Strategy for Wednesday, August 22nd. Let's start by taking a look at the S&P futures, the ES. It had a turnaround from a high during the evening of 1425.50, and it closed down. It actually only closed down a couple hundred, about two handles, but the turnaround was significant because it took off and it was at one time up about 700 or 800 points, and it closed down. So as you can see, it closed up against the resistance of this trend line that goes back, as I've shown you in past videos. It goes all the way back to October of 2011. And if you look at that, if you look at the tail that's been formed on this, it's very significant. And it was on higher volume of 650 million. And let me bring down the tick chart and the vol spread. Tick chart, it's the first time it's been consistently negative 1,000. There was one tick above 1,000 when the market was up during the daytime, 40 or 50 points. And then 1,000 readings with the high of minus 1,000 readings with a high of plus 600 from 9:45 all the way till the end of the day. In fact, it rarely even peaked above plus 600. But look at all the negative 1,000 ticks all the way through, and even at 2:15, it hit a minus 1,300 tick. So it looks like we're starting to roll to the downside here. On the vol spread, this is a rare occurrence. I don't see this too often, that it starts up and it hits a peak of 120 million, and then it just started rolling over. And it started rolling over at about noontime, went below zero at about 2 o'clock, and then stayed below zero. So it's a nice formation of rolling over on higher volume. Let's look at the ES and see what that's doing on the 21-minute cash price. This spiked up. It spiked up in the morning and then just started rolling over. Now, if you were following the 21-minute cash on the combination charts here, it didn't really start rolling. The smaller wave didn't really start rolling over until about 14:17 on the ES at about 11:30. However, let's look at another chart here. Let's look at the 1597 chart. It's an intraday chart. If you're a day trader and you were following this, it's got a little bit of a hook at about 850. But it still continued up. But T2, again, reminder, this first two waves, these are each coupled waves. This is T1, T2, T3, T4, and T5. And they all represent different Fibonacci lengths of time represented in waves to get in and get out of the market. So you actually had a play at the beginning of the day to get. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's move this over to today. That was yesterday's chart. Okay, at the beginning of the day, this took off from the overnight session, and it actually gained from the beginning at 1418. It actually made it up to 1424, so another 600 points. However, right at 9:58, this started rolling over. So not only was this on the left-hand chart, was the intraday hitting this trend line that's established, that's a year old, but it was also peaking on the 1597 tick chart and going below zero at 1422. 1422, 1423. Now, if you were just following this on a day chart, on a tick chart, and you were playing this during the day, you would get out at the first hash mark down here, which is 1410. So that's a 12-point move. Okay, I want to jump right into Apple here. Apple's been moving. It was up, I believe it was up like 17 points yesterday. It was up another 7 or 8 points today until, this is the daily chart on the left-hand side, it hit a resistance point of 676. Now, 674, I'm sorry. Now, let's just drop this down a little bit here. And I'll tell you why this point is significant. If we take a Fibonacci extension from the last high of April 10th to the low established May 18th, and you draw a fib chart like this. This is the old high of 644. In the 1272 extension is 475. It actually hit 478, I'm sorry, it's 675. It hit 674.88. So I was looking at this and deciding if this is going to hit the Fibonacci extension here, do I play this as a short right here or wait till it continues up to see if it continues up to the next extension of the 1618, which is $714. And I looked over at the tick chart, which is the 1597 tick chart, and I use that because it fits with Apple, because Apple's a very active stock, high volume stock. And on wave T3 right here, it starts rolling over after a 3-day run back here at 636 all the way up to 674. And when it started rolling over, not only was I using the confirmation of the 1272 extension as a place to get in on the short side, but I was confirming it with T3 right here. And right at 669, actually I got in at 672. I preempted the T3 and I got in at T1 and made sure it was rolling over in the right direction. So T1 rolled into T2, rolled into T3, into T4, and into T5. So I am now short Apple from 672. Now where do we think it's going here? Let's erase these lines over on the left and get this back going. Okay, so now you can take the fib tool and measure from the last time that it took off, which was July 31st, up to the old high, which was a 1272 extension, and a 50% retracement brings it down to 623. Now we look over on the 21-minute Apple chart, and 623 puts it right about at the 377 moving average. So that might be a perfect place to cover the shorts. Okay, if we look at Goldman Sachs, it looks like it has a little more juice to get to the upside. It was actually up on the day today, even though it did have a reversal right at the 233 exponential moving average. These are still pretty firmly above zero, but more importantly, even the 21, none of the 21 waves, T1 through T5, are below zero. So I'm staying away from that as a short. This may have just a little more room on the upside, or it may just come through, but I'm waiting for a confirmation. Okay, taking a look at Amazon. Amazon has a little bit of strength here. Still on the upside, it still doesn't look too bad. And if the market has any kind of push to the upside or any kind of, you know, 400 or 500 point move on the S&P, or four or five handles rather, it might still keep pushing up. That's what it looks like on the daily. On the 21-minute, it looks like it's starting to roll over a little bit. And it started to roll over 3 days ago at about 241, and then it kind of poked its head back up this morning all the way up to 243. Now, even though it only finished down 90 cents, it was at one time it was up like $6, $5 or $6. But I like this here because T1, if you stretch this out, both the waves are simultaneously moving below zero. So for it to have a little hiccup to the upside when that happens is okay. But as long as the trend keeps falling, okay, so now T4 is down and T5 is beginning to go down. So I would not play Amazon to the upside anymore, but I'd look for opportunities to get it down to at least this level, 234, and maybe where this line of, this resistance line right here is 229, 230. Okay, in past videos I've emphasized that the peak, that this is an extraordinary peak in Baidu, even though all the waves were heading above zero, especially 1, 2, and 3. And even though, and actually T5 was coming above zero, the long wave on T5. The extraordinary thing that I noticed was that the peak that was being generated by this last move from 100 all the way up to 133. And even though it got by all this congestion here, it still was only, with this peak generated, it was a perfect 618 extension here. And you can see that. I'll blow that up a little bit for you. It was a perfect extension at the 618 right in here at 133. That's what it hit, and it immediately started to roll over. That's the first indication, the peak of T1. Then if you look at the peak on the left-hand chart and look at the cursor on the right-hand side, it starts moving, it starts rolling over the day before yesterday. So this is Tuesday, so on Monday, right out of the gate, it started moving down. Now, for my strategy, I actually started playing this off of T4 when this started to go under, when it went under simultaneously, both waves of T3 moved down, and then T4 moved down, and then it really went down. So I've been in this for a few days, and it did take some heat between 130 and 135, but it rolled over nicely. The T1 came up, but it never affected T4, which was the main wave that I was looking at. And you can see it curved up here, but never went above zero. And then when it came down again, it kind of crushed that line. So what are we looking for as a target here? It already came through the 377. So let's look at the daily here a little bit wider. And let's get rid of these lines here. Scrunch that up a little bit. I'd be looking for at least a 50%, maybe a 618 retracement of this move here. Okay, so my target on Baidu on the downside is a minimum of a 117. It's sitting at 123 right now, and it's even down, and it's down after hours also. And that was a heck of a move, 7.5 points. It's like that was 5 3/4% move. So you can see how powerful these waves are when they extend themselves. And in addition to that, it was at a 50% retracement from high to low from the last move. So my first target on Baidu is 117, and with any luck it'll get down to 113. Okay, Netflix is completely not paying attention to the market. It's doing its own thing. It's waffling above and below zero on the T1, T2, T3, T4, and it's stretching out even on the 21 minutes. It's not really doing that much. But it is working its way up miraculously to, may even try to, I originally had a target of 69 all the way down here, but I wasn't going to play it to the upside. I was going to wait till it hit 69 and then take another assessment of it, because this is also just eyeballing it about a 50% retracement, 69.70, and it's also the 55 period moving average. So I watch that. I think it's a good short right in here where former resistance was. Right about 68.70. It's also 50% retracement from here, and it's also the 55 period moving average. So watch that one. I would not play that on the long side. In past videos, I've talked about MasterCard, that it's gone sideways, maybe up 2 or 3 points, down 2 or 3 points. But the action that I was looking at was on the left-hand side here, right here. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for this for about 2 weeks. 3 days ago, it finally broke to the downside. After all the waves were down, T1, T2, T3, and T4, T5 finally started breaking to the downside, and we got a nice pop to the downside of 4 points today. I think at one point it was actually down 5 points. So let's figure out a target for this. I think I've been waiting for this. This is the first time since April of 2011 that this lighter blue wave on T5 on the daily is below zero. Very, very significant. It's even more significant that all the waves before it have gone down, and this has managed to go sideways. So I have an immediate target on this of 415, and let's see how this matches up. Okay, the 144 exponential moving average on the daily is 112. So let's stick with 112 here. So 114 is the old low, is the 113 is the low from August 7th, and 114 is the exponential moving average. So I'm going to go with 112. Okay, I've suggested in the past that Google is getting a little bit peaky, but it's still obviously played it out even more so than the Dow did. The S&P and the Dow was actually going sideways. This popped up another 25 points on top of that. But even more significant is what's going on in the 21, as this is happening on the left-hand side on the 6-day, in the 6-day period. You can see the launch point was August 10th. And if we move over to August 10th over here, this is the launch point of this. This is where the waves take off, and the waves start coming down, T1. Actually, T1 never went back above zero. T2 started going down here, so actually, strategically, it would have been okay to get in a T2. Because if you waited till T3, well, you could have gotten this. Let me see. Okay, so T3 still gave you time to get in. And it even gave you time to get in today before this actually started dropping with the market at almost 10 o'clock. Because until 10 o'clock, this was still up there. And then it dropped from 676 down to 662. Nice option play. Very nice option play. All right, the last thing I want to look at is GLD, the gold ETF. And I made note many times that all this congestion here with all the exponential moving averages, you can see day after day, up, down 2 points, up 2 points, down 2 points. It never could get through this congestion. However, the waves were consistently above zero. But it doesn't matter what the waves are saying. If the price doesn't follow, it's not going to work. And I said, this is not a buy until this breaks above and closes above this congestion. Okay, so now where do we get in? Because this has already happened since this already took off, and it was like a pretty good move, 1.5, 1.5, a 0.57, and it closed near the highs of the day. So the best move to be in here is wait for a retracement back to 157. So this is like another, or to the peak of this peak, and this peak is about 157.85. So let's look over to the 21, because all the 21 waves are above zero now. So 157.85 is the 55 period moving average on the 21 minute cash price, which fills half this gap, and I would be a buyer at 157.85, 157.90. Buyer for the upside. I wanted to take a look at one more thing here, the VIX. I wanted to show you what the VIX was doing, because on the, you can't really tell much on the daily. On the left hand side, it was hitting new lows for like 3-year lows. But what was happening on the 21 minute was that it was slowly just massaging its way to the upside, and especially T3 here, T4, and now T5 is peeking its head above zero. So this could take out the 1562 in a hurry and move it up to the next level of 17, which is in sync with what the market is doing. So this looks like a good run up to, if it gets past the 377 moving average on the 21 period, it'll probably double the length of what's going on. So I'm looking at a 17 price on this, which translates into like a 300 or 400 point move on the Dow. Well, that's all I have for this evening. Good luck trading, and I will see you at the next update.